All right, buckle up everyone, because today we're diving headfirst into an album that's not just music, it's a sonic horror film.
Oh, I like where you're going with
We're
this.
talking Iron Maiden's Killers, released back in '81.
A pivotal year for heavy metal, really. The new wave of British heavy metal was in full swing.
And Iron Maiden, with this album, well, they weren't just along for the ride, they were driving the damn tour bus.
Absolutely. Raw energy, that gritty, almost punk-infused sound. But what sets Killers apart, what we're going to dig into today, is the storytelling.
Yeah, forget your typical headbanging anthems. This album is full of stories that could make Stephen King break a sweat.
It's a potent cocktail. You've got the aggression, the power of the music itself, and then layered on top are these narratives, often dark, sometimes even disturbing.
And it's interesting, because this is also the last album with Paul Di'Anno on vocals.
Right, before the Bruce Dickinson era. So there's this sense of, I don't know, almost a last hurrah, a rawness that's about to be unleashed in a different direction.
Like standing on the edge of a cliff, wind whipping around you,
Yeah.
and you know something big is coming. Speaking of cliffs, let's talk about the title track, Killers, because that one doesn't waste any time throwing you right into the deep end.
Oh, no, it's a plunge. And the brilliance of it is how they put you, the listener, in the headspace of both the hunted and the hunter.
Exactly. One minute you're walking down a dark street looking over your shoulder. The next you're the one with the glint of madness in your eye.
Those opening lines, you walk through the subway, his eyes burn a hole in your back. Chilling, man. Absolutely chilling.
It's like they tapped into some primal fear we all have, that feeling of being watched, followed. Suddenly you're not just listening to the song, you're in it.
And that's a hallmark of Iron Maiden songwriting, especially on this album. It's cinematic. They paint these vivid pictures with their music, pull you into their world.
Speaking of cinematic, we got to talk about Murders in the Rue Morgue. I mean, talk about setting a scene.
Oh, man, that one is pure Edgar Allan Poe. The fog, the gas lights, the feeling of dread that just seeps from the music.
You become that poor sap, framed for a crime he didn't commit, running for his life through the dark streets of Paris. And the way they use that language barrier, the feeling of isolation. I can't speak French, so I couldn't explain. And like a fool, I started running away. Just brilliant.
Yeah, and that theme of isolation, of not being understood, it pops up again and again throughout Killers.
Like a recurring nightmare. But here's the thing. Killers isn't just about scaring the crap out of you. It's got this surprising emotional range. Like take Wrathchild, for example.
Oh, yeah, totally a different vibe. Wrathchild is pure, raw energy, like a punch to the gut. That search for identity, the anger, the frustration, it's all there.
You could almost say it's an anthem for anyone who's ever felt like an outsider, like they don't belong. And let's be honest, who hasn't felt that way at some point?
Especially back then in the early 80s, the world was a pretty messed up place, and Wrathchild just tapped into all that anger and angst.
Absolutely. But then Iron Maiden flips the script again with Prodigal Son. Suddenly, we're not just angry, we're introspective.
Guilt, regret, even a touch of the supernatural. It's like they're saying, hey, we can shred with the best of them, but we can also make you think.
And make you feel. I mean, Purgatory, that song is haunting. The way it explores death, the afterlife, it's almost beautiful in its darkness.
It's definitely a side of Iron Maiden that some people might not expect, but it's there and it's powerful.
And then there's Twilight Zone. Man, talk about a song that gets stuck in your head.
Oh, yeah. And again, you see that theme of isolation, that yearning for connection, but with this almost dreamlike, surreal quality.
It's like being trapped in a nightmare you can't wake up from.
Exactly. And musically, it's so different from the other tracks on the album. It's more atmospheric, more experimental.
And that's what's so cool about Killers.
Yeah.
It's not afraid to experiment, to push boundaries.
And in doing so, they created an album that's not just a collection of songs, it's an experience.
Absolutely. And they did it with such style, Like they took that raw energy, that heaviness, and injected it with this literary sensibility.
It's true. You don't often see a band like Iron Maiden, steeped in the raw power of heavy metal, drawing inspiration from the likes of Edgar Allan Poe.
It's like they found this weird, wonderful intersection between headbanging and Gothic literature.
And it works, because they're not just borrowing themes or titles, they're tapping into this deeper sense of atmosphere, of mood.
Absolutely. They understand that music, especially heavy metal, is about more than just the notes. It's about the feeling.
Exactly. And speaking of feeling, I defy anyone to listen to Genghis Khan and not feel a surge of adrenaline.
Right. And to think That's an instrumental track. They managed to evoke the thundering hooves, the clash of swords, the whole epic scope of Genghis Khan's conquests
Yeah.
without a single lyric.
It's a testament to their musicianship, for sure, but it also speaks to the power of music to tell stories without words.
Absolutely. But then they can turn around and write a song like Murders in the Rue Morgue and make you feel like you're right there in the middle of a gothic horror novel, like Whiplash in the best possible way.
And I think that's part of what makes Killers such a captivating listen, even all these years later. It's that constant push and pull, that contrast between the technical brilliance of the music and the darkness of the narratives.
It's like they're playing with your expectations. You think you know what's coming next, and then boom, they hit you with something totally unexpected.
Exactly. And that unpredictability, that sense of danger is intoxicating. It's what keeps you on the edge of your seat coming back for more.
And let's be honest, how many albums can you say that about? Even after all these years, after countless listens, Killers still has the power to surprise me.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a testament to the band's vision, their commitment to pushing boundaries. They could have easily played it safe, stuck to a formula.
But they didn't. They went for it. They threw everything they had into this album, and the result is something truly special.
It's raw, it's powerful, it's unsettling, and it's brilliant. It's Iron Maiden at their finest. And, it's interesting to think about this album as a kind of bridge between the Paul Di'Anno era and the Bruce Dickinson era.
It is, isn't it? You can hear hints of what's to come, that theatrical flair that Dickinson would bring, but there's still that raw, untamed energy that defines their early work.
Right. It's like they're standing on the precipice of something huge, and they know it. It's lightning in a bottle, You can't manufacture that kind of energy. It's either there or it's not. And with Killers, it's definitely there.
Oh yeah, it leaps right out of the speakers and grabs you by the throat. But in a good way.
Yeah.
In a way that makes you want to crank it up even louder.
Exactly. It's that visceral experience I was talking about earlier. It's not just music you hear, it's music you feel deep down.
It's like, that feeling when you're watching a horror movie and your heart is racing and you're kind of scared, but you can't look away.
Yeah. That's the sweet spot right there. And Iron Maiden, they know how to hit that spot every single time.
And part of it, I think, is how they use these literary and historical references. Like, we talked about Poe already, but even with Genghis Khan, it's not just a cool name for an instrumental. They're pulling you into that world, that historical moment.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's a reminder that heavy metal, or any kind of music for that matter, doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's informed by everything that came before it, all the art and literature and history.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
In Iron Maiden, they get that. They're like these metal scholars weaving together all these different threads into something new and exciting.
Exactly. And that's why I think their music has resonated with so many people for so long. It's not just about the riffs. It's about the ideas, the stories, the whole package.
And they're not afraid to be smart about it. Like, they're not dumbing it down for anybody. They're challenging you to keep up, to think, to experience something different.
And, that's what makes them so important, I think. They took a genre that was often dismissed as just noise, and they showed the world that it could be so much more.
They elevated it, turned it into an art form.
Exactly. And Killers, it's the perfect example of that. It's a landmark album, not just for Iron Maiden, but for heavy metal as a whole.
So, to wrap things up, if you haven't listened to Killers in a while, or if you've never heard it, do yourself a favor and crank it up. But be warned, once you step into the world of Killers, you might not want to leave.
And watch out for those shadows. You never know what might be lurking there.
And that, my friends, is a wrap on our deep dive into Iron Maiden's Killers. Hopefully, we've given you a new appreciation for this iconic album and the power of heavy metal storytelling. Until next time, keep it loud, keep it heavy, and keep exploring the dark corners of music history.